You want me to do what now? Lieutenant Commander Erica Frost stared at the holographic mission brief, convinced she'd misread something. Admiral Hernandez's hologram flickered slightly as he leaned forward. You heard me correctly, Frost. The Vraxian king has specifically requested a human warrior to, and I quote, humiliate him in ritual combat before his court. With all due respect, sir, that sounds suspiciously like a trap, or a joke. Possibly both. Erica crossed her arms, the movement causing her military-grade exoskeleton to whir softly. She'd only been Earth's military attaché to the Galactic Confederation for 8 standard months, and already the diplomatic assignments were getting weird. I assure you it's neither, Hernandez replied with the long-suffering sigh of someone who'd been explaining the inexplicable all day. This is standard Vraxian political theater. Their entire social hierarchy is built on ritualized combat demonstrations. The king periodically invites warriors from allied species to participate. And we're sending me? I'm not even trained in their combat rituals. That's precisely the point. The Admiral's hologram scratched his beard, a gesture that had been digitally transferred despite its irrelevance. The Vraxians consider humans to be, how did their ambassador put it, adorably primitive but earnest. They've categorized us as a Class C non-threat species. This demonstration is actually a courtesy to help boost our standing. Erica snorted. Non-threat? Has their intelligence division been asleep for the past century? We've fought off 3 separate invasions. Yes, but not with energy weapons or psychic abilities or whatever else passes for sophisticated warfare out here. Hernandez waved dismissively. We did it with bullets, bombs, and a concerning amount of improvisation. The Confederation thinks we're quaint. So the king wants to make himself look magnanimous by letting a primitive human try her best before he inevitably trounces her for the entertainment of his court? Now you're getting it. And we're agreeing to this. Why exactly? The Admiral's image leaned closer, his voice dropping. Because, Commander, Earth needs better trade routes through Vraxian space, and apparently watching their king beat up a human is the price of admission to those negotiations. Erica pinched the bridge of her nose. Understood, sir. I'll go get my ass handed to me for the good of humanity. That's the spirit. And Commander, try not to embarrass us too badly. The Vraxian royal palace was exactly what you'd expect from a civilization that had mastered interstellar travel 5 millennia ago, but had somehow never moved past their sword and sorcery aesthetic phase. Towering spires of some iridescent metallic material twisted skyward, defying both gravity and good taste. Energy shields shimmered like translucent soap bubbles around the perimeter, prismatic and impenetrable. Gaudy, isn't it? Murmured Lieutenant Dara Khatri, Erica's diplomatic liaison, as their shuttle approached the landing platform. Wait until you see the interior. It's like someone gave a medieval warlord unlimited funds and access to a physics-defying construction crew. Great, Erica muttered, adjusting her dress uniform. Beneath it, she wore a lightweight tactical bodysuit, the most unobtrusive protection Earth's military had permitted her to bring to this glorified sham battle. Any last-minute advice before I get publicly pummeled for interplanetary goodwill? Dara tapped her tablet, scrolling through her briefing notes. The combat is ritualized but not entirely scripted. You're expected to make a genuine effort, then lose with dignity after displaying some token resistance. Think of it as diplomatic theater. Fantastic. I've always wanted to be in a rigged intergalactic WWE match. Erica checked her reflection in the shuttle's window. Her regulation-cut blonde hair was neatly slicked back, her expression carefully neutral. She'd spent her career as a frontline tactical specialist, not a performer, but today she'd play whatever role Earth needed. The shuttle touched down with barely a tremor. Beyond the viewports, a delegation of Vraxians awaited, tall, vaguely reptilian humanoids, with opalescent scales and elaborate ceremonial armor that looked about as practical as stiletto heels in a swamp. Remember, Dara whispered as the shuttle door hissed open, the Vraxians value stoicism and ceremonial politeness. No jokes, no sarcasm, and for the love of everything sacred, don't mention their tails. They have tails? Erica whispered back, but Dara was already stepping forward with a practiced diplomatic smile. The welcoming ceremony was mercifully brief by Vraxian standards, which meant it only lasted 47 minutes and involved just 3 ritual exchanges of symbolic weapons. Erica stood at attention, letting the flowery diplomatic speech wash over her while she surreptitiously studied her hosts. Despite their reptilian appearance, Vraxians moved with fluid grace, their movements precise and controlled. Their ceremonial guard carried energy staves that hummed with contained power, a stark contrast to the ornate but seemingly archaic bladed weapons displayed throughout the palace. As the procession moved deeper into the palace, Erica couldn't help but feel she was missing something important. For a species supposedly dismissive of humans as primitive, they were showing an awful lot of deference to their delegation. Several times she caught palace guards watching her with what could only be described as wary assessment. "The ceremonial combat will commence in one planetary rotation," announced the Vraxian Chamberlain, a willowy figure draped in metallic fabric that rippled like mercury. "The human warrior will be provided quarters to prepare herself mentally and physically. As is customary, His Magnificence King Zax Valthrax the 47th will select the weapons at the time of combat." "How considerate," Erica murmured, earning a sharp elbow from Dara. The Chamberlain's inner eyelids flickered, their version of a raised eyebrow. "It is indeed, human warrior. His Magnificence is most eager for this encounter." Something in the Chamberlain's tone made Erica's combat instincts flare. There was subtext here she wasn't grasping. "I'm honored by His Magnificence's interest," she replied carefully. The Chamberlain made a gesture that might have been approval or gas. "You will be escorted to your chambers now. The king sends his regards and hopes your species' reputation for adaptability proves entertaining." As they followed their escort through the labyrinthine palace corridors, Dara leaned close. "Is it my imagination, or are they treating this demonstration more seriously than our briefing suggested?" "It's not your imagination," Erica replied softly. "Either our intel is way off, or there's something else going on here." Erica's assigned quarters were luxurious by human standards, and probably considered rustic by Vraxian ones. The ceiling soared at least 30 feet high, decorated with what appeared to be a star map. The furniture was scaled for beings a foot taller than herself, making her feel like a child at the adult's table. "Well, this is cozy," she remarked to the empty room after her escort had departed. "I find it excessive, personally," replied a voice from nowhere. Erica whirled, dropping into a defensive stance. "Who's there?" A shimmer in the air materialized into a Vraxian female, her scales a deeper blue than the males Erica had seen so far. Unlike the others, she wore simple, functional attire with minimal ornamentation. "Peace, human, I am Kavex, handmaiden to the Queen." The Vraxian gave a slight bow. "I have been assigned to assist you in understanding what is actually happening here." Erica remained tense. "And what exactly is happening here?" Kavex gestured toward the oversized seating area. "Perhaps you should sit. This explanation involves several layers of Vraxian political intrigue, and I'm told humans find our politics somewhat convoluted." "Try me," Erica said, cautiously lowering herself onto a chair that made her feet dangle like a toddler's. "I was in Earth's Special Tactical Division. Convoluted is our bread and butter." The Vraxian's head tilted. "I do not understand that reference, but I appreciate your confidence." She sat across from Erica, her long limbs folding with practiced grace. "The combat demonstration you've been invited to participate in is not what your government believes it to be." "Color me shocked. I do not know how to color you." "It's an expression. It means I'm not surprised." Erica leaned forward. "Let me guess. Instead of a friendly exhibition match where I pretend to try and then graciously lose, the king is planning something else entirely." Kavex's inner eyelids flickered rapidly. Surprise, Erica guessed. "You are perceptive for a species classified as non-threatening." "About that classification? Who exactly decided humans were adorably primitive?" "The Galactic Confederation's Threat Assessment Bureau. They categorize all newly encountered species." "Based on what criteria?" "Technological advancement, psychic capability, biological adaptations, and historical propensity for interspecies violence." Kavex recited this as if reading from a manual. "Humans scored poorly on the first 3 metrics." "And the 4th? "Your species received the highest rating ever recorded," Kavex admitted. "But without the technological means to project that violence beyond your immediate solar system, you were categorized as a regional threat at most." Erica couldn't help but laugh. "So we're the galactic equivalent of an angry toddler with a stick?" A surprisingly apt analogy, though I would say more like an angry primate with crude explosives. Kavex's mouth twisted in what might have been a smile. "But that perception is precisely what King Zax Valthrax intends to exploit tomorrow." "Explain." "The king faces a political challenge from his cousin, General Khazar. To maintain his throne, he must periodically demonstrate his martial prowess. Traditionally, these demonstrations are indeed choreographed exhibitions against foreign warriors, who are well compensated for their participation. But not this time, Erica guessed. Not this time, Kvex confirmed. The king has been researching humanity extensively. He believes your species' threat classification is a significant underestimation. He intends to prove his superiority by defeating you in actual combat, not staged, but genuine. He will employ forbidden combat technologies to ensure his victory is both absolute and humiliating. Erica absorbed this information, turning it over in her mind. And if I refuse to participate now? It would be considered a diplomatic catastrophe. Your government would lose all standing with not just the Vraxian Empire, but potentially the entire Confederation. So I have to fight, but I'm expected to lose spectacularly to illegal weapons that might kill me. Also, King What's-His-Face can impress his political rivals? Kvex's scales shifted color slightly. That is remarkably succinct. Erica sighed deeply. Does the Queen know about this? I assume she does if you're here. Queen Nyx Valthrax sees further than her husband. She believes the king's fears about humans are well-founded, but his approach is dangerously misguided. She sent me to warn you and to offer an alternative strategy. I'm listening. Kvex leaned forward, her voice dropping. The Queen suggests that instead of merely defending yourself, you should demonstrate why the Threat Assessment Bureau's classification of humanity requires immediate revision. Erica blinked. You want me to actually fight the king and win? Not precisely win. That would cause a diplomatic incident of its own. But perhaps enlighten. Kvex's scales rippled with what might have been amusement. There are protocols for combat demonstrations where both participants display unexpected skill. It allows both to save face while establishing mutual respect. And the Queen supports this because she believes an alliance with humanity based on respect will serve the Empire better than one based on perceived superiority. And because she tires of her husband's political theatrics. Erica leaned back, considering. Even if I wanted to enlighten his magnificence, I'm not exactly armed for the occasion. I was explicitly instructed not to bring weapons. Kvex's inner eyelids flickered in what Erica was beginning to recognize as the Vraxian equivalent of a knowing smile. The Queen anticipated this concern. She reached into a concealed pocket and withdrew what looked like an ornate bracelet. This is ceremonial Vraxian combat jewelry. Tradition allows visiting warriors to wear the ceremonial adornments of their hosts. And what does this particular piece of jewelry do? It contains a Class 3 kinetic energy deflector. Nothing that would stop a dedicated military weapon, but sufficient to neutralize the surprises the king has planned. Erica took the bracelet, feeling its unexpected weight. This isn't standard issue for ceremonial combat, is it? Let us say it is traditionally reserved for those the Queen particularly favors. Kvex rose. I must return before my absence is noted. Remember, human, the goal is not to defeat the king, but to demonstrate that humanity deserves recategorization. She paused at the door. And perhaps to teach his magnificence that underestimating an opponent is the first step toward defeat. With that cryptic farewell, Kvex shimmered and vanished, leaving Erica alone with a contraband alien energy shield and the distinct feeling that galactic politics were even more Byzantine than Earth's. The Vraxian combat arena looked like someone had crossbred a Roman Colosseum with a laser light show. The circular space was surrounded by tiered seating filled with Vraxian nobility, their scales and ornaments creating a shimmering mosaic of color. Energy fields hummed overhead, presumably to contain any overzealous combat displays and protect the audience. Erica stood at one entrance, dressed in her Earth military dress uniform with the ceremonial bracelet concealed beneath her sleeve. Across the arena, King Zax Valthrax made his entrance with typical Vraxian subtlety, which meant a procession of trumpeters, incense-bearers, and at least 20 guards in formation. The king himself was imposing even by Vraxian standards. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, his scales shimmered with a metallic gold hue that Erica suspected was artificial enhancement rather than natural coloration. His ceremonial armor looked functional despite its ornate design, with energy projectors barely disguised as decorative elements. Definitely not regulation equipment, Erica muttered to herself. High above in the royal box, Queen Nyx Valthrax sat watching the proceedings with regal detachment. Unlike her husband's gaudy display, the queen wore simple but elegant attire, her natural scale coloration, a deep violet, unenhanced. She made no acknowledgement of Erica, but Kvex stood at her side, her posture subtly alert. The Chamberlain's voice echoed through the arena. Today we witness the honored combat demonstration between His Magnificence King Zax Valthrax the 47th and the human warrior Lieutenant Commander Erica Frost of Earth's Military Diplomatic Corps. As is tradition, His Magnificence has selected the weapons. At this announcement, servants approached with a hovering tray. On it lay two identical weapons that resembled elaborate quarterstaffs, etched with glowing runes. The traditional Vraxian combat staff, the Chamberlain intoned, a weapon of dignity and skill. Erica accepted hers with a formal bow, testing its weight. Despite its ornate appearance, the balance was excellent. Small energy nodes at each end suggested it did more than just deliver blunt force trauma. The king took his weapon and immediately activated it, causing the runes to glow brighter and the energy nodes to emit a low hum. He performed a series of elaborate flourishes that were clearly meant to intimidate. As tradition dictates, continued the Chamberlain, the demonstration will proceed until one combatant yields or the combat master declares a conclusion. May honor guide your strikes. A gong sounded, and Erica barely had time to activate her own staff, before the king lunged across the space between them with surprising speed for his size. His first strike came down like a thunderbolt, and Erica sidestepped rather than attempting to block. The staff hit the arena floor, releasing a pulse of energy that left a scorched crater in the stone. Definitely not standard equipment, Erica confirmed mentally, circling warily as the audience murmured in appreciation of their king's power. Your species' agility is commendable, the king remarked, his voice pitched to carry to the audience. But evasion alone merely delays the inevitable. His next series of attacks came in a blur, a combination of sweeping strikes and jabbing thrusts that forced Erica into continuous defensive movement. She blocked when necessary, each impact sending jarring vibrations up her arms despite her military-enhanced physique. Is retreating the primary combat technique of humans? The king taunted as the audience chittered with laughter. Erica said nothing, conserving her breath and studying her opponent. The king was strong and skilled, but his movements followed predictable patterns. His combat training was clearly designed for ritual demonstrations rather than actual battlefield application. After several minutes of this one-sided display, Erica caught a subtle nod from Kvex in the royal box. Time to revise some galactic preconceptions about humanity. The next time the king launched an overhead strike, instead of dodging, Erica planted her feet and met his staff with her own. The impact was tremendous, but she held firm, her stance unwavering. For just an instant, surprise flickered across the king's face. Allow me to demonstrate how humans actually fight, Your Magnificence, Erica said, her voice carrying across the suddenly hushed arena. She disengaged and immediately launched into the offensive combat routine she'd been mentally mapping out during her defensive phase. Her movements weren't as flashy as the king's ceremonial techniques, but they were brutally efficient. Precision strikes targeting joints and balance points, using leverage rather than brute force. The king found himself backpedaling, his elaborate combat form disrupted by Erica's pragmatic approach. His expression shifted from surprise to annoyance to something approaching alarm. The audience's reaction transformed from amusement to stunned silence. Erica pressed her advantage, driving the king toward the edge of the combat circle. When he attempted to counter with an energy pulse from his staff, she was ready, the concealed bracelet absorbing and dissipating the energy before it could strike her. More murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was definitely not proceeding according to the usual script. The king's scales darkened with what Erica presumed was the Vraxian equivalent of anger or exertion. He raised his staff overhead, and Erica noticed additional energy nodes activating along its length, the forbidden technology Kvex had warned about. Enough games, he snarled, no longer performing for the audience. Let us conclude this demonstration. The staff came down in an arc of crackling energy, far more power than the weapon should have been capable of generating. Erica didn't attempt to block this strike. Instead, she executed a combat roll beneath it, coming up inside the king's guard while his weapon was still completing its downward trajectory. With precise timing, she struck the junction where the king's ornate armor met at his midsection, a vulnerability she'd noted during his elaborate entrance. The enhanced strength of her tactical bodysuit added force to the blow. There was a sound like crystal shattering as the king's ceremonial armor cracked, energy dispersers failing in cascading failure. The king staggered backward, his expression a mixture of pain and utter disbelief. The arena fell dead silent. Erica immediately stepped back and lowered her weapon, assuming a non-threatening stance. This was the delicate moment Kvex had coached her on, demonstrating capability without forcing the king into a humiliating surrender. For several heartbeats, no one moved. The king stood frozen, one hand pressed to his damaged armor, staring at Erica as if seeing her, or perhaps humans in general, for the first time. Then slowly, deliberately, he straightened to his full height. Rather than rage or embarrassment, his expression shifted to something like thoughtful reassessment. "Most illuminating," he said, his voice carrying through the silent arena. "It seems the human warrior brings unexpected skills to our demonstration." He raised his staff, holding it horizontally in a gesture that Erica recognized from her briefing as signaling a respectful conclusion. "The Vraxian Empire acknowledges the warrior spirit of Earth." Erica mirrored the gesture, inclining her head slightly. "Earth is honored by the opportunity to demonstrate our capabilities, Your Magnificence." The tension in the arena broke as the Chamberlain hurriedly announced the conclusion of the demonstration. The audience erupted in excited discussion. This was clearly the most interesting ritual combat they'd witnessed in some time. As attendants rushed to assist the king, Erica caught sight of the queen. Though her expression remained regal and composed, there was unmistakable satisfaction in her posture. Mission accomplished, it seemed, though Erica suspected the diplomatic fallout was just beginning. "You broke his armor." Admiral Hernandez's hologram looked like it might have a stroke, if holograms could have strokes. "You were supposed to put up token resistance and lose gracefully. And instead, you broke the Vraxian king's ceremonial armor." Erica stood at attention in her quarters, the debriefing taking place mere hours after the combat demonstration. "Yes, sir. There were complicating factors." "Complicating factors," the Admiral repeated flatly. "Commander, do you have any idea of the diplomatic nightmare you've potentially created? The Vraxians have a ritual for everything, including how foreign dignitaries are supposed to lose to their king." "With respect, sir, the king wasn't following those same rituals." Erica proceeded to explain the Queen's warning, the enhanced weapons, and the political context she'd been operating in. As she spoke, the Admiral's expression gradually shifted from apoplectic to calculating. "So you're telling me," he said slowly when she finished, "that the Queen of the Vraxians essentially recruited you to give her husband a reality check about human capabilities?" "That's an accurate summary, sir. And instead of embarrassing Earth as a primitive backwater, you demonstrated that we might be more formidable than the Confederation's classification suggests?" "Yes, sir." The Admiral was silent for a long moment. "The strange thing is, Commander, in the 3 hours since your demonstration, we've received formal communication from the Vraxian Royal Court. I expected a diplomatic protest at minimum. Instead, we've been offered substantially improved trade terms and, this is the interesting part, an invitation to resubmit our species classification petition to the Confederation's Threat Assessment Bureau." Erica allowed herself a small smile. "It appears the Queen's strategy was successful, sir." "It appears so." The Admiral shook his head, but there was reluctant admiration in his expression. "I'm still not happy about you deviating from mission parameters, Commander. But it's hard to argue with results. The Vraxian ambassador is suddenly treating our delegation with remarkable deference. If I may ask, sir, what exactly is our new classification?" The Admiral's hologram grinned. "The preliminary recommendation is upgrading Earth from Class C non-threat species to Class A emergent power with unpredictable combat adaptability." Apparently, breaking the king's armor made quite the impression. "Good to know our reputation for improvisation remains intact, sir." "Indeed. There's one more thing, Commander. You've received a personal invitation from Queen Nyx Valthrax for a private audience tomorrow. Apparently, she's interested in discussing mutual security interests between our species." Erica raised an eyebrow. "That sounds suspiciously like an alliance overture, sir." "That's how our analysts are reading it too. It seems your impromptu combat lesson may have opened more doors than we anticipated." The Admiral's expression turned serious again. "Handle this meeting with the Queen carefully, Commander. I don't need to tell you how significant a potential alliance with the Vraxians would be for Earth's position in the Confederation." "Understood, sir. I'll be the soul of diplomatic tact." "See that you are. And Frost." The Admiral's hologram flickered as he leaned forward. "Good work out there. It's not every day a human gets to rewrite our species' reputation with a single combat staff strike." The Queen's private audience chamber was nothing like the ostentatious public spaces of the palace. Simple, elegant lines defined the architecture, with living plants rather than gaudy ornaments providing decoration. The lighting was softer, emanating from what appeared to be bioluminescent sources, rather than the harsh energy fields used elsewhere. Queen Nyx Valthrax herself sat not on a throne, but on a simple cushioned bench beside a reflecting pool, where iridescent aquatic creatures similar to Earth's manta rays glided peacefully. "Lieutenant Commander Frost," she greeted as Erica was shown in. I appreciate your accepting my invitation. Erica bowed with formal precision. The honor is mine, Your Majesty. The Queen gestured to a second bench across from her, sized appropriately for a human. Please, be seated. We have much to discuss, and court formalities would only hinder our conversation. As Erica sat, she noticed Kavek standing unobtrusively near an archway, her posture alert but relaxed. The handmaiden gave Erica the slightest nod of acknowledgement. I must first express my gratitude, the Queen said, her voice musical but authoritative. You handled yesterday's situation with remarkable skill. I'm pleased Your Majesty found my performance satisfactory, Erica replied carefully. The Queen's scales rippled in what Erica was beginning to recognize as amusement. Let us dispense with diplomatic evasions, Commander. You did precisely what was needed. You demonstrated human capability without humiliating my husband. A delicate balance few could have achieved. How is His Magnificence today? Physically? Merely bruised. Intellectually? Significantly enlightened. The Queen's inner eyelids flickered. He has spent the intervening hours reviewing all available information on human history and warfare. I believe the term his advisors used was obsessively fascinated. I hope this fascination is beneficial to Earth-Vraxian relations, Erica said. That depends entirely on what Earth desires from such relations. The Queen leaned forward slightly. Your species stands at a critical juncture, Commander. For millennia, the Galactic Confederation has categorized and contained emerging species based on perceived threat levels. Some, like the Arcturians, are revered for their psychic capabilities. Others, like the Traxi, for their technological superiority. And humans? Where do we fit in this galactic hierarchy? That is precisely the question, isn't it? The Queen gestured toward the reflecting pool, where the ray-like creatures had formed into a spiral pattern. The Confederation believed they understood your species. Physically unexceptional, technologically primitive, no psychic abilities to speak of. The very definition of a Class C non-threat. But you see it differently. I study history, Commander. Do you know what fascinates me most about humanity's brief interstellar records? When Erica shook her head, the Queen continued. Your adaptability, specifically your species' remarkable ability to integrate and repurpose technologies from other civilizations. We've always been quick learners, Erica acknowledged. Too quick, by some estimations. The Queen's voice took on a more serious tone. There are those in the Confederation who believe humanity should be restricted from accessing certain technologies, confined to your current development path for the safety of the galactic community. Erica felt her shoulders tense. Is that the Vraxian position as well? It was my husband's until yesterday. The Queen's scales shifted to a deeper violet. He believed containing human advancement was the prudent course, but you provided him with a valuable lesson about underestimating perceived primitives. And your position, Your Majesty? The Queen was silent for a moment, studying Erica with unblinking eyes. I believe alliances based on mutual respect are stronger than those built on patronizing charity or enforced limitation. I believe humanity's particular talents could complement Vraxian strengths in ways beneficial to both our species. What talents specifically interest you? Erica asked, sensing they were approaching the real purpose of this meeting. Your improvisational combat approach yesterday was illuminating. Vraxians excel at structured systems. Our technology, our society, even our warfare is built on careful planning and established patterns. We create rules and follow them meticulously. The Queen gestured around the chamber. It makes us excellent architects, remarkable engineers, and unfortunately, somewhat predictable warriors. While humans, the Queen continued, thrive on breaking rules, finding loopholes, and adapting systems to purposes their creators never envisioned. Your species turned a mining explosive into a weapon into an energy source, and communications technology into an art form. You see possibilities where we see only established parameters. Erica absorbed this assessment, recognizing its accuracy. You're suggesting a complementary alliance, then? Vraxian structure and human adaptability? Precisely. Beginning with military and technological exchange programs that would benefit both our species. The Queen's expression grew more intense. The Vraxian Empire faces challenges from within the Confederation. Species that view our traditional ways as stagnant. Humanity faces challenges of its own. Limited technology and restricted access to interstellar resources. An alliance could address both concerns, Erica concluded. Indeed. After yesterday's demonstration, the king has authorized me to propose a formal military partnership between our species. Joint training initiatives, technology sharing within specified parameters, and Vraxian support for Earth's petition to upgrade its Confederation status. This was far beyond the trade route negotiations Earth had initially hoped for. Erica chose her next words carefully. Such an offer is beyond my authority to accept, but I can assure your majesty that Earth's government will give it the most serious consideration. Of course. The Queen rose gracefully, signaling the meeting's conclusion. I have transmitted the formal proposal to your diplomatic corps already, but I wanted to extend my personal thanks to the warrior who made it possible. Erica stood and bowed. It was an honor to participate in your cultural traditions, your majesty. The Queen's scales rippled with unmistakable humor. Let us be honest, Commander. You showed my husband that humanity is not to be underestimated, a lesson the entire Confederation may soon learn. She extended her hand in the human manner, a gesture that must have required research. I look forward to seeing what our species can accomplish together. As Erica clasped the Queen's hand, cooler than human skin but surprisingly similar in texture, she couldn't help but think that humanity's position in the galaxy had just fundamentally changed with a single well-placed strike. One standard year later, Lieutenant Commander Erica Frost, now Colonel Frost, following her promotion to head of Earth's newly established Interspecies Combat Training Division, stood on the observation deck of the EAS Adaptable, humanity's first starship incorporating Vraxian technology. Below on the training deck, 30 human soldiers and an equal number of Vraxian warriors moved through combat exercises that blended both species' techniques. The humans had adopted the disciplined precision of Vraxian combat forms, while teaching their counterparts the improvisational tactics that had made Earth's military historically effective despite technological limitations. Quite the change from last year's ritual combat, wouldn't you say, Colonel? Came a familiar voice. Erica turned to find Kavex approaching, no longer dressed as a handmaiden, but in the formal attire of a Vraxian diplomatic officer. Ambassador Kavex, Erica greeted her with a smile. I was wondering when you'd make it aboard. My shuttle docked an hour ago. The Queen sends her regards and looks forward to your report on the joint training program. They stood side by side, watching the training below. A human sergeant was demonstrating how to repurpose a standard-issue energy staff as an improvised grappling hook, much to the fascination of his Vraxian colleagues. The Confederation Security Council meets next month to vote on Earth's reclassification petition, Kavex remarked. The Queen believes the new designation will be Class A emergent power with strategic alliance value. Quite an upgrade from adorably primitive, Erica observed dryly. Indeed, the Arcturians are particularly disturbed by how quickly humans have adapted Vraxian technology. They've lodged a formal protest about the acceleration of Earth's development timeline. Let me guess. The Queen reminded them that technological exchange between allied species is perfectly permissible under Confederation law. Kavex's scales rippled with amusement. Her Majesty was perhaps more diplomatic in her phrasing, but that was the essence, yes. She paused, her expression growing more serious. Not everyone is pleased with humanity's rapid ascension, Colonel. There are concerns about how your species might apply these new capabilities. There always are when the established order faces change, Erica replied. But I think the galaxy will find that humans make better partners than subjects. On the deck below, a Vraxian warrior successfully executed an unorthodox flanking maneuver that had originated in Earth's ancient Roman legions. The blending of tactical philosophies was producing remarkable results. But I think the galaxy will find that humans make better partners than subjects, Erica replied. The Queen understood that from the beginning. Kavex made a gesture of acknowledgement. She sees patterns others miss. It's why she survived 3 royal succession challenges. Speaking of succession, how is the king adapting to the new political reality? His Magnificence has developed what humans might call an obsession with your species' military history. Kavex's scales shifted in what Erica now recognized as their equivalent of amused exasperation. He's commissioned translations of your Sun Tzu, Clausewitz, and someone called Patton. The Royal Library now contains a dedicated human warfare section that he visits daily. Well, that's flattering, I suppose. It's more than that. The king now personally oversees the Military Alliance Committee. He's convinced that the Confederation has fundamentally misunderstood humanity's potential. His favorite phrase in council meetings has become, "Remember the human demonstration." Erica couldn't suppress her smile. And to think all it took was one good hit to shatter centuries of galactic prejudice. One precisely calculated strike, Kvex corrected. You could have disabled him completely, but you chose restraint. That impressed the Queen even more than your combat skills. Below, the training session was concluding, with warriors from both species exchanging formal salutes that somehow incorporated elements from both their traditions, an emerging hybrid protocol that symbolized their alliance. The Arcturians claim humans are destabilizing elements, Kvex continued. They say your species lacks the evolutionary maturity to wield advanced technology responsibly. And what do the Vraxians say to that? We remind them that the same was once said of our empire 10,000 years ago, when we first reached the stars. Kvex turned to face Erica fully. Every species that has achieved significance in the Confederation was once considered primitive by those who came before. The difference is in how they respond to that judgment. A communication chime interrupted them. Erica checked the notification on her wrist display. It seems our new joint fleet exercises have been approved by Confederation oversight. The EAS Adaptable will rendezvous with the Vraxian 9th Battle Group next week for the first officially sanctioned human-Vraxian combat maneuvers. Another milestone, Kvex observed. The Queen will be pleased. She believes our species are just beginning to discover how complementary our strengths truly are. From ritual combat to joint fleet exercises in 1 year, Erica mused. Not bad for a Class C non-threat species. A classification that has already become something of a joke among Confederation diplomats, Kvex admitted. Several other established powers are reassessing their evaluation matrices. The Zolarian hegemony has already requested formal diplomatic contact with Earth, something they've previously refused to extend to any species less than 5 centuries into interstellar travel. Erica raised an eyebrow. And humanity has barely crossed the 50-year mark. Your reputation precedes you. Kvex gestured toward the viewport, where Earth's second generation of Vraxian-influenced starships was being constructed in orbital shipyards. The Queen has a saying, "Judge not by the age of the blade, but by the skill of the hand that wields it." Their conversation was interrupted by a junior officer, who approached with a formal salute. Colonel Frost, Ambassador Kvex, Admiral Hernandez requests your presence in the briefing room. The Arcturian delegation has arrived early for the Technology Exchange Conference. Ah, here we go, Erica murmured to Kvex as they fell into step behind the officer. Time to further terrify the galaxy's psychic overlords with humanity's barbaric innovation. Consider it practice for next month's Confederation Assembly, Kvex replied, her scales shifting to the deeper blue that Erica had come to recognize as anticipatory amusement. I believe your Earth expression is, "You ain't seen nothing yet?" Close enough, Erica laughed. Though I suspect the Arcturians might prefer we return to being adorably primitive rather than disruptively innovative. Too late, Kvex said with finality. The galaxy is awakening to a fundamental truth. Humanity may have been the last to arrive at the interstellar table, but you're certainly making an impression on the seating arrangement. As they entered the briefing room to face the notoriously haughty Arcturian delegation, Erica couldn't help but reflect on how a single combat demonstration, one strike that broke a king's armor and pride, had cascaded into a fundamental shift in humanity's galactic standing, from underestimated curiosities to valued allies in under a year. The Arcturian ambassador, a willowy being with crystalline appendages that shimmered with psychic energy, regarded the human Vraxian joint delegation with obvious disdain as they entered. We still fail to comprehend, the ambassador began without preamble, their voice resonating directly in the minds of those present. Why the Vraxian Empire would risk destabilizing the careful balance of the Confederation by accelerating the technological development of an unproven species. Admiral Hernandez started to respond with the carefully prepared diplomatic statement, but King Zax Valthrax himself, who had arrived separately and was now resplendent in ceremonial armor, notably more practically designed than his previous version, raised a hand to silence him. Perhaps, the king rumbled, his scales shifting to royal gold, the Arcturian collective would benefit from a combat demonstration. As the Arcturian ambassador's crystalline appendages flickered in alarm, Erica caught Kvex's eye across the table and suppressed a smile. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and the performance was just beginning. End. Why in the ever-loving expanse of the cosmos would you not have a planetary defense grid? The Federation ambassador's translator couldn't quite hide the incredulous tone beneath the metallic voice. I scratched my beard, looking at my colleagues around the conference table. Admiral Thompson shrugged. Lieutenant Commander Vasquez stifled a laugh. and Dr. Nelson was too busy sketching what looked suspiciously like a stick figure version of the ambassador being eaten by what I assume was meant to be a shark. Helpful bunch, really. Ambassador Zikthix, I said, carefully pronouncing the clicking sounds that made up his name. Earth has alternative defensive measures. Alternative? The ambassador's 6 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of extreme confusion we'd been told during our cultural briefing. Every world in the Federation has a standard defensive grid. It's... He paused, mandibles clicking together. It's simply what one does. Ah yes, the cosmic equivalent of, but everyone else is doing it. Fantastic. I'm Captain Michael Hayes of the United Earth Space Command, and somehow I'd drawn the short straw of explaining human military philosophy to a 9-foot-tall insectoid diplomat who couldn't fathom why we hadn't ringed our planet with enough firepower to light up half the galaxy. You see, Ambassador, humans have a slightly different approach to planetary defense. Different how? The ambassador's antennae twitched. Your species has been spacefaring for barely 70 years. The protocols for planetary defense grids have been established for millennia. Thompson finally decided to contribute. We don't really do protocols all that well. Let me back up a bit. 3 months ago, humanity received its formal invitation to join the Galactic Federation, a coalition of some 300 intelligent species spread across our arm of the Milky Way. After the initial holy shit aliens are real panic subsided, we got down to the business of integration. It turned out that the galaxy was a lot more organized than we'd ever imagined. The Federation had committees for everything, and I mean everything. There was a 17-member committee dedicated solely to standardizing the curvature of corridor handrails across member species vessels. I wish I was joking. Most of the integration issues were trivial. Adapting our calendar to galactic standard time, establishing translation protocols, the usual bureaucratic nonsense. But when the Federation Defense Committee arrived to inspect Earth's defensive capabilities, well, that's when things got interesting. Captain Hayes, let me be clear, Ambassador Zikthix continued, pulling me back to the present. The Federation requires all member worlds to maintain a standardized defensive grid for mutual protection. Your world is naked. Dr. Nelson snorted loudly, then tried to cover it with an unconvincing cough. Exposed, the ambassador amended with what I assumed was the equivalent of an eye roll. Your planet is exposed. I leaned forward. Ambassador, how many Federation worlds have been successfully attacked in the last century? None, of course. He chittered proudly. Our defensive protocols. How many Federation ships have been lost to piracy in the same time frame? I interrupted. The ambassador's mandibles clicked in what we'd come to recognize as discomfort. 43 major vessels. And those ships all had standard defensive capabilities, correct? Well, yes, but... So your standardized defenses aren't perfect, I concluded. Nothing is perfect, Captain, the ambassador's translator conveyed with a hint of testiness. But our projections indicate that without a defense grid, Earth would face a 78.3% likelihood of hostile action within a standard galactic year. Admiral Thompson finally sat up straight. Ambassador, are you familiar with the concept of a carrier? No? The ambassador's translator seemed uncertain. Thompson nodded to Lieutenant Commander Vasquez, who tapped at her tablet. The holographic display in the center of the conference table lit up, showing an aircraft carrier. This, Thompson explained, is an older model of what we humans call a carrier. It's a mobile platform that launches smaller attack craft. The ambassador's 6 eyes studied the hologram. Primitive, but I understand the concept. Many species employ similar vessels for their defense grids. The difference, I continued, is that humans don't use these primarily for defense. We use them for power projection. Power projection? The translator hesitated, as if the concept didn't have a direct translation. Instead of surrounding our territories with static defenses, we prefer mobile forces that can strike at potential threats before they reach us. The ambassador's antennae went completely still, a sign of intense focus. You mean to say that your species' defensive strategy is offensive in nature? The best defense is a good offense, Dr. Nelson piped up, finally contributing something besides doodles. It's an old human saying. Old and true, Thompson added. While the Federation was perfecting planetary shields, humanity was perfecting rapid response and preemptive action. I pulled up another hologram showing Earth's fleet distribution. We don't have a defense grid because we don't sit around waiting to be attacked, Ambassador. We patrol, we monitor, and if necessary, we strike first. The ambassador's translator went silent for a full 30 seconds as he processed this information. His exoskeleton changed hue slightly, shifting from blue-green to a deeper azure, what our xenobiologists had identified as the equivalent of a thoughtful frown. "This approach is most unusual," he finally said, "and frankly, somewhat alarming." "More alarming than leaving Earth naked?" I asked with a smile. "Perhaps we should schedule a demonstration," Admiral Thompson suggested. "Show rather than tell." The ambassador's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. A demonstration would be educational. Little did we know just how educational it would be. The demonstration was set for 2 weeks later. The Federation Defense Committee sent 3 observer ships to participate. Sleek, crystalline vessels that looked more like floating art installations than military craft. They positioned themselves at the edge of our solar system, alongside one of their automated defense platforms, a small version of the grid they wanted us to build around Earth. Our contribution to this little show and tell was the UES Thermopylae, a mid-sized response vessel with a crew of 200. Captain Olivia Reed was in command, one of our best tactical officers and, not coincidentally, someone with the patience to deal with bewildered aliens. I was monitoring the demonstration from UESC headquarters in Geneva, along with Admiral Thompson and our now regular diplomatic shadow, Ambassador Zek Thix. "The scenario is simple," I explained to the ambassador. "The Federation defense platform will attempt to protect a designated target from an unknown attack vector. The Thermopylae will attempt to neutralize the target despite the defenses." "This seems unnecessarily aggressive," the ambassador commented, mandibles clicking rapidly. "This is basically a game of laser tag, Ambassador," Thompson reassured him. "No actual weapons will be fired. The simulation uses low-power targeting systems to register hits." "And what is the purpose of this exercise?" The ambassador's translator couldn't quite conceal his skepticism. "To demonstrate why we prefer mobility over static defenses," I replied, just as the comm channel lit up. "UES Thermopylae to command. We are in position and ready to begin the exercise." Captain Reed's voice was calm and professional. "You may proceed, Captain," Thompson authorized. What happened next was, well, a bit embarrassing. For the Federation, not for us. The Thermopylae disappeared from our sensors. "Where did your vessel go?" the ambassador demanded, his exoskeleton flashing an alarmed orange. "Exactly where it's supposed to be," I answered with a smile. 97 seconds later, the Federation observer ships reported that the target had been destroyed by multiple simultaneous hits from what appeared to be phantom sensor readings. The defense platform never fired a single countermeasure. "How is this possible?" The ambassador was practically vibrating with agitation. "Our defense systems are the most advanced in known space." "Your defense systems," Thompson explained gently, "are designed to detect and respond to known threats following expected attack patterns. Captain Reed simply didn't use any of those patterns. But our sensors were looking for engine signatures, weapons charging, and other standard indicators of an approaching vessel." I completed his thought. "The Thermopylae powered down to minimal life support, used cold gas thrusters for positioning, and deployed a dozen microsatellites that simultaneously targeted your simulation module from multiple vectors." "This is not how space combat works," the ambassador protested. Dr. Nelson, who had joined us for the demonstration, chuckled. "With all due respect, Ambassador, that's exactly how space combat works when humans are involved." The ambassador's translator went silent again as he communicated with the Federation observers. When he finally spoke again, his tone had changed. "The Defense Committee wishes to know if this method could be replicated against actual Federation defense systems." Thompson and I exchanged glances. "Ambassador," I said carefully, "what Captain Reed just demonstrated was a basic tactical maneuver taught to first-year cadets. Our actual combat doctrines are considerably more advanced." The silence that followed was deafening. 2 days later, I found myself in a significantly larger meeting room, facing not just Ambassador Zikthix, but 5 additional Federation representatives, including the chairman of the Defense Committee, a gelatinous being named, approximately, Orb Weaver. "Captain Hayes." The chairman's translator produced a honeyed voice with peculiar resonant undertones. "The Defense Committee has reviewed your demonstration with great interest." "I'm glad to hear it," I replied, trying not to stare at the way the chairman's body undulated within its environmental suit. "We have come to an unexpected conclusion," the chairman continued. "The committee believes that the Earth approach to defensive strategy may have merit." I blinked in surprise. That's quite a change from insisting we build a standard defense grid. Ambassador Zikthix's mandibles clicked rapidly. "The chairman's statement should not be interpreted as full endorsement of your methods, Captain, merely recognition that there may be complementary approaches. What the ambassador means," the chairman's translator conveyed with an amused lilt, "is that we would like to learn more about your offensive defense doctrine." And that's how I ended up establishing the first ever Joint Federation Earth tactical training program. The Federation would still get their defense grid. The political inertia was too great to overcome completely. But it would be supplemented by a rapid response fleet based on human designs. The real entertainment began when the first Federation officers arrived for training. "You want us to what?" The NAR officer, Lieutenant something unpronounceable, stared at Lieutenant Commander Vasquez with all four of his eyes widened in disbelief. "Power down your vessel, let it drift on ballistic trajectory, and approach the target using only maneuvering thrusters," Vasquez repeated patiently. "But that would make us completely vulnerable," the NAR protested, his fur bristling. "Only if you're detected," Vasquez countered. "And if we are?" "Then you learn to move faster next time," Vasquez replied with a grin that showed too many teeth. I was observing this initial training session alongside a Federation education liaison, a willowy being named Alara from a species called the Luminary. Unlike most Federation representatives, she seemed genuinely fascinated rather than disturbed by human tactics. "Your people think very differently about space," she observed, her voice musical even through the translator. "We think differently about most things," I admitted. "Humans evolved as pursuit predators on a world full of dangers. We're hardwired to be proactive about threats." "Pursuit predators?" She tilted her luminescent head. "We're not particularly strong or fast compared to many Earth species, but we can keep going for incredibly long periods. Our ancestors would literally chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion." Her inner light pulsed, and what I'd learned was an expression of surprise. "And you believe this evolutionary history influences your approach to space defense?" "Absolutely. We don't build walls and wait. We hunt." She was quiet for a moment, watching as Vasquez demonstrated a silent running protocol to the increasingly uncomfortable alien officers. "Most Federation species evolved from herd or hive social structures," she finally said. "The defense grid mentality is deeply ingrained, the concept of circling the vulnerable members and presenting a unified defensive front." "That makes sense," I acknowledged. "Different evolutionary paths, different instinctive responses. Yet your way clearly works as well," she mused. "Perhaps better in some circumstances. The best approach is probably a combination," I suggested. "Your grids, our hunters." Her light brightened in what I'd come to recognize as a smile. "A fascinating synthesis, though I suspect it will take some time for certain committee members to fully embrace the concept." As if on cue, the training room erupted in chaos as one of the alien officers accidentally activated his ship's emergency beacon during the stealth exercise. Alarms blared, and Vasquez's colorful Spanish cursing needed no translation at all. "Perhaps quite a long time," Alara amended with a musical laugh. The training program continued for months with mixed results. Some Federation species took to human tactics with surprising aptitude, particularly the Vexari, a species of ambush predators who immediately grasped the concept of lying in wait. Others, like the hive-minded Quillari, struggled with the very idea of operating independently. Meanwhile, Federation engineers began work on Earth's defense grid, though with significant modifications suggested by human tacticians. Rather than a fixed array of defensive platforms, the Earth model featured mobile units that could reposition as needed, a compromise between Federation doctrine and human flexibility. I was reviewing the latest grid designs with Dr. Nelson when Admiral Thompson burst into my office, his face grim. "We've got a situation, Captain." "What kind of situation?" I asked, immediately alert. "Pirates. They've hit a Federation transport near the Arcturus relay. Civilian vessel, mostly passenger traffic." I felt my stomach tighten. "Casualties?" "Unknown. The distress call just came in through Federation channels." "Response time for their nearest defense unit?" Thompson's expression darkened further. 18 hours minimum." "And our closest vessel?" "The Thermopylae could be there in under 3. I was already reaching for my comm unit. "Get Captain Reed moving, and inform Ambassador Zekthix. This might be an opportunity to demonstrate our approach in a real scenario." "Already done. He's requesting to observe from our command center." "Fine, but make it clear this isn't a demonstration anymore. This is a rescue operation." 3 hours later, I stood in UESC's Tactical Operations Center alongside Admiral Thompson, Ambassador Zekthix, and somewhat surprisingly, Alara, the education liaison. "I hope you don't mind my presence, Captain," she said quietly. "The ambassador suggested I might find the operation educational." "Of course." I nodded, though I suspected the real reason was that she was one of the few Federation representatives who actually understood what we were about to do. The main display showed the Thermopylae's approach to the Arcturus relay, a massive Federation structure that served as both a communications hub and navigational waypoint. The pirate vessel, identified as belonging to the Krell Marauders, a notorious group that had plagued that sector for decades, had the transport ship locked in a docking clamp and was apparently in the process of boarding. "Why do they not simply destroy the pirate vessel?" Ambassador Zekthix asked, mandibles clicking in agitation. "Your weapons outmatch theirs significantly." "Because there are innocent civilians on both ships," I explained. "We don't know where the passengers are being held." "Then what is your strategy?" "Watch and learn, Ambassador," Admiral Thompson said, nodding toward the display as Captain Reed's voice came through. "Thermopylae to command. We are initiating Operation Trojan Horse." What followed was a masterclass in human ingenuity applied to combat. Rather than engaging the pirate vessel directly, the Thermopylae launched what appeared to be debris, chunks of metal and composite materials that drifted toward the locked ships on ballistic trajectories. "Decoys?" the ambassador guessed. "Better," I replied. "Watch the heat signatures." Each piece of debris contained a single Marine in an advanced EVA suit, their life signs barely registering on sensors. They attached themselves to the pirate vessel's hull in 12 different locations, then began cutting their way in simultaneously. "This is—" The ambassador seemed at a loss for words. "Extremely risky," Ilara finished for him. "If detected, these individuals would have no protection." "They're not being detected because no one expects an attack like this," Thompson explained. "Pirates are looking for ships and weapons, not individual soldiers drifting in with the local space junk." The operation proceeded with surgical precision. The Marines breached the hull, entered the pirate vessel, and began systematically securing sections. Meanwhile, the Thermopylae remained at a distance, appearing to negotiate, keeping the pirates' attention focused outward rather than on their own compromised security. Within 17 minutes, Captain Reed's voice returned. "Command, this is Thermopylae. All civilians secured. Pirate crew contained. No casualties on either side." The ambassador's translator couldn't quite capture the complex emotion in his clicking response, but the color change in his exoskeleton, a pulsing mix of blue and gold, suggested amazement. "No casualties?" he finally managed. "Not even among the pirates?" "That was the objective," I confirmed. "Neutralize the threat and rescue the civilians with minimal harm to anyone. Our protocols for such situations recommend overwhelming force applied from multiple defense vessels," he said slowly. "The standard response would have likely resulted in significant casualties." "That's because your standard response is predictable," Thompson pointed out. "The pirates know exactly what to expect, so they prepare accordingly, including using hostages as shields." "But your approach," the ambassador's antennae quivered, "is based on the unexpected." Ilara completed his thought, her inner light pulsing with what I'd come to recognize as excitement. "The pirates had no defense against it because they couldn't conceive of it." The ambassador turned all 6 eyes toward me. "Captain Hayes, I believe I owe you an apology, and perhaps the Federation owes your species a debt of gratitude. The Arcturus operation changed everything. Word spread quickly through Federation channels, how a single Earth vessel had accomplished what would typically require a full defense squadron, without firing a single shot or losing a single life. 2 weeks later, I found myself addressing not just the Defense Committee but the Federation High Council itself, a gathering of the 20 most influential species in the Alliance. The chamber was vast and ornate, designed to accommodate beings of wildly different physiologies and environmental needs. Captain Hayes, the High Counselor, a Meridian named Tholus, whose species were among the Federation's founders, addressed me. "The Federation is deeply interested in integrating human defensive, or perhaps I should say offensive, methodologies into our protocols." "We're happy to assist," I replied, keeping my expression neutral despite my surprise. The Federation bureaucracy typically moved at a glacial pace. This rapid response was unprecedented. "There is, however, a concern," another counselor, a Vexari named Shrix, interjected. "Your species' predilection for aggressive action could potentially destabilize established diplomatic relations, if not properly channeled." Translation: they were worried we might start picking fights. "Counselor Shrix," I responded carefully. "Human history is indeed filled with conflict, but also with innovation born from necessity. Our approach to space defense isn't about aggression, it's about adaptability." "Explain," the counselor requested, her reptilian features impossible to read. "The universe doesn't care about protocols or traditions. It rewards those who can adapt to changing circumstances. Humans learned this lesson through thousands of years of warfare against ourselves, a brutal education that taught us to value flexibility over rigid doctrine. Yet you now seek peace as a Federation member, the High Counselor observed. Because we've learned that peace must be actively maintained, I explained. Static defenses create an illusion of security. Active monitoring and response, what you call our offensive approach, actually prevents conflicts by addressing threats before they fully materialize. The council chamber fell silent as the members communicated among themselves through their neural networks. Finally, the High Counselor spoke again. Captain Hayes, the council proposes a new joint initiative. Earth will train a specialized Federation response force in your methodologies, while the Federation will provide resources to enhance Earth's defensive capabilities. Not a standard grid, he added, noting my expression, but an integrated system compatible with your existing doctrine. I couldn't help but smile. That sounds remarkably reasonable, High Counselor. The Federation has survived for millennia by recognizing value where it exists, he replied with what might have been amusement, even when it comes in unexpected packages. 6 months later, I stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned Joint Federation Earth Defense Station in orbit above my home planet. Ambassador Zekthix stood beside me, his exoskeleton gleaming in Earth's reflected light. It is not what I initially envisioned, he admitted, gesturing at the structure. A hybrid of Federation technology and human design principles. Unlike traditional defense grids, this system featured mobile platforms, stealth capabilities, and integration with Earth's existing fleet. It's better, I suggested. Indeed. His mandibles clicked in what I'd come to recognize as his version of a chuckle. The Defense Committee has been studying your historical military doctrines. We find your ancient Roman concept particularly apt. Which concept is that? Si vis pacem, parabellum, he replied, his translator producing the Latin phrase with surprising accuracy. If you want peace, prepare for war. An old idea, but a good one, I agreed. Though I must confess, he continued, some of your other military philosophies remain perplexing. Your General Patton's assertion that a good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week's runs counter to 17,000 years of Federation strategic thought. I laughed. Humans have never been good at waiting for perfect solutions. So we have noticed, he replied dryly. The Joint Response Fleet has already reduced piracy by 62% in the sectors where they patrol. Not through combat, but merely through their unpredictability. That's the point, Ambassador. The best defense isn't just about having the biggest guns or the strongest shields. It's about making potential aggressors think twice because they can't predict your response. He was quiet for a moment, all 6 eyes focused on the Earth below. When your species first joined the Federation, many believed you were too aggressive, too undisciplined to integrate properly into galactic society. And now? Now many are wondering how we maintained peace for so long without your perspective. His exoskeleton shifted to a contemplative blue. Perhaps defense and offense are not so different after all. Perhaps they are simply 2 aspects of the same principle: survival. I'll drink to that philosophy, I said, raising my coffee mug in a toast. The ambassador raised his own container of nutrient solution. To new perspectives and old wisdom. As we stood there watching Earth rotate below us, I couldn't help but think about how quickly things had changed. 6 months ago, the Federation had been insisting we conform to their defensive protocols. Now they were incorporating our tactics into their own doctrine. Humanity hadn't just joined the galactic community, we'd changed it simply by being ourselves. By bringing our unique evolutionary perspective to the stars. Maybe that was our true contribution to the Federation. Not our technology or our resources, but our fundamentally different way of thinking. Our refusal to simply hide behind walls when we could instead actively shape our destiny. The best defense isn't a defense at all. It's making sure no one dares attack in the first place. Hey, maybe we should put that on the Federation seal. The other species might finally start to understand how humans think. Or they might run screaming in the other direction. Either way, the galaxy would never be quite the same again. Chapter 3 years later. Captain Hayes, please tell me this is some kind of human joke. Ambassador Zekthix's mandibles were clicking so rapidly they created a continuous buzzing sound. I sighed, looking at the simulation results displayed in the war room. Not a joke, Ambassador. A genuine tactical concern. But the scenario is preposterous. Why would anyone attack a heavily defended Federation core world with... He seemed unable to even say it. With a civilian passenger liner? I completed his thought. Because no one would expect it. This is precisely the kind of paranoid thinking that the Council warned about, he chittered angrily, creating imaginary threats to justify even more aggressive security measures. Admiral Thompson, now sporting significantly more gray in his hair than when we'd first met the ambassador, cleared his throat. With respect, Ambassador, we said the same thing about the Arcturus raid 3 years ago. No one would be that bold, the Federation analysts said, until someone was. The ambassador's exoskeleton darkened in frustration. But this simulation suggests sabotaging our own defensive protocols. It would require intimate knowledge of Federation security systems. Which is precisely why it's a vulnerability, I pointed out. The Federation relies too heavily on standardized systems. Standardization creates predictability, and predictability can be exploited. Dr. Nelson, who had developed the simulation, nodded emphatically. We're not suggesting this specific attack will happen, Ambassador. We're demonstrating a class of potential threats that current Federation doctrine doesn't account for. The ambassador's translator fell silent as he processed this. Finally, he spoke again, his tone resigned. The Defense Committee will not be pleased, but I will present your findings. As he left, Admiral Thompson shook his head. 3 years of working together, and they still get nervous every time we point out a new potential threat vector. Can you blame them? I asked. We basically told them their entire defensive philosophy has fundamental flaws. Better we tell them than someone demonstrates it the hard way, Nelson pointed out. True enough, I agreed. Though I doubt they'll implement our recommended changes quickly. The Federation moves at its own pace. Thompson smiled wryly. That's why they have us now. To move a bit faster when necessary. He wasn't wrong. The Joint Defensive Initiative had evolved far beyond its original scope. Earth was now the Federation's de facto rapid response center, housing specialized teams trained to handle precisely the kinds of unconventional threats that traditional defense protocols couldn't address. We'd become the Federation's immune system, constantly probing for weaknesses, developing countermeasures, and responding to emerging threats before they could fully materialize. It wasn't the role anyone had expected humanity to play in galactic society. We'd entered the cosmic stage thinking we'd be minor players, learning from the wisdom of ancient spacefaring civilizations. Instead, we'd become the Federation's strategic innovators, the species that asked what if, and then figured out how to prevent those scenarios from ever occurring. Or as Admiral Thompson liked to put it, the species that doesn't just check under the bed for monsters, but sets traps for them and studies their behavior patterns. Not bad for the new kids on the block. When Ambassador Zicthix returned 3 days later, he brought surprising news. The Defense Committee has approved your recommendations, Captain, he announced, his exoskeleton shifting to a shade I'd never seen before. In fact, they've created a new division specifically to implement them, the Unconventional Threat Assessment and Response Unit. That's unexpected, I admitted, genuinely surprised by the Federation's rapid acceptance. It seems your paranoid thinking is becoming contagious, he replied, with what I'd learned to recognize as dry humor, though they insist on calling it strategic foresight. Same thing, fancier name, Thompson quipped. There is more, the ambassador continued. The High Council has requested that you personally lead this new unit, Captain Hayes. I blinked in surprise. Me? But I'm not even a Federation official. That, apparently, is precisely why they want you. His mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. They believe an outsider perspective is essential for the role. I looked at Thompson, who nodded encouragingly. This is what we've been working toward, Michael, he said quietly. Actual integration of human tactical thinking into Federation doctrine. He was right, of course. This wasn't just a symbolic position. It was an opportunity to fundamentally reshape how the Federation approached defense and security. I'll need a team, I said, already thinking ahead. A mix of human personnel and Federation specialists. Already approved, the ambassador confirmed. You may select whoever you require. And full access to Federation defense protocols? No restrictions? Within reason, yes. His exoskeleton shifted slightly, though some council members are, shall we say, nervous about giving humans unfettered access to all our security systems. I couldn't help but laugh. That's actually a healthy paranoia, Ambassador. I'd be worried if they weren't a little nervous. Then you accept? I nodded. I accept, though I hope everyone understands what they're getting into. Humans don't do things halfway. After 3 years of collaboration, Captain, I believe the Federation is beginning to understand that quite well, he replied. And yet they asked for you anyway. Perhaps we are all becoming a bit more human in our thinking. Or perhaps, I suggested, we're creating something entirely new, neither purely human nor traditionally Federation. The ambassador's exoskeleton shifted to a thoughtful blue. A synthesis. Yes, I believe that is exactly what the High Council is hoping for. As we finalized the details of my new position, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we'd come. From being questioned about our lack of a planetary defense grid, to leading the Federation's most innovative security initiative, all in just 3 years. It turned out that humanity's greatest contribution to galactic society wasn't our technology, or our resources, or even our military prowess. It was our perspective, our ability to look at established systems and ask, what if? We didn't just think outside the box. We questioned why there was a box in the first place. And maybe that was exactly what the Federation needed after millennia of relative stability. A species just paranoid enough to imagine the unimaginable, and just stubborn enough to do something about it. The best defense isn't a defense at all. It's the ability to adapt faster than your opponents can plan. To be so unpredictable that potential aggressors can never be certain of success. In a universe full of unknowns, that might be humanity's greatest gift to the stars. That and our coffee. The ambassador had become quite fond of it, once we'd formulated a version compatible with his biochemistry. Some things, it seems, truly are universal. The end.